My name is Larry and I'm going to tell you a story that changed my life forever. What happened still seems like a strange dream to me, but every detail was cruel reality. It all started 3 years ago in Denver, Colorado. I worked as a manager at a local construction company, and my wife Valerie taught chemistry at the local high school. We had been married for 8 years and our life seemed stable and predictable. That Friday evening is particularly memorable to me. Valerie said she was going to a company party at her colleague Susan's house. Nothing unusual, she often spent time with colleagues from work. But this time something was different. Maybe her voice sounded a little tense, or she took too long choosing what to wear. I decided to spend the evening at home watching football. Around 10 in the evening my phone rang. It was Susan calling. "Hi Larry," she said. "Is Valerie there? She didn't come to our party and I'm worried about her." My heart stopped. If Valerie wasn't at Susan's, where had she spent this evening? And why did she lie to me? The next few weeks I tried not to think about that call. Maybe there was some misunderstanding. Maybe Valerie just mixed up the dates or changed her mind about going. But the suspicions wouldn't leave me. I started paying attention to little things. Valerie stayed late at work more often, talking about extra classes or parent meetings. She became less talkative at home, constantly checking her phone and hiding the screen when I approached. One day while Valerie was taking a shower, her phone rang. The screen showed the name Michael Work. I knew all her colleagues but there was no Michael among them. Who was Michael? My suspicion grew but I didn't know how to act. I didn't want to accuse my wife without evidence, but ignoring these signals was impossible. The turning point came a month later. Valerie said she was going to an educational conference in Chicago for the weekend. She showed me the conference brochure and even the name of the hotel where she would stay. On Saturday morning when she was supposed to be in Chicago, I decided to call the hotel. The woman at reception politely informed me that no Valerie Johnson was registered with them. Then I realized I could no longer close my eyes to the truth. But how could I find out where my wife really was? Suddenly it hit me. Valerie always used our joint credit card. I logged into online banking and looked at recent transactions. What I saw shocked me. A purchase at a restaurant in downtown Denver last night. A hotel but not the one she told me about. The hotel was here in our city. And worst of all, flowers and champagne, bought yesterday afternoon. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number of that hotel. I introduced myself as Valerie Johnson's husband and said I wanted to order breakfast to her room as a surprise. "Of course, sir," the employee replied. "Room 237, right?" Room 237. My wife was in a hotel 5 minutes away from our home, not at a conference in Chicago. I got in the car not knowing exactly what I was going to do. Part of me wanted to go to the hotel right now and catch her. But another part was afraid of what I might see. Eventually I decided to wait. If Valerie was really cheating on me I wanted to be sure. And I also wanted to figure out how to act next. On Sunday evening, Valerie returned home with stories about the conference. She talked about seminars she attended, about new people she met. Every word was a lie and it hurt to hear it. "How was the conference?" I asked, looking into her eyes. "Very useful," she replied without blinking an eye. "Learned a lot of new things about innovative teaching methods." That night I barely slept. I lay next to a woman who was lying to me and didn't know what to do next. The next morning when Valerie went to work, I called her school. The secretary informed me that Valerie had taken a day off and wouldn't be at work. So she was lying not only about the weekend, but also about today. Where had she really gone? I decided to follow her. It sounds terrible but I had the right to know the truth. I drove to the school and parked nearby. Around 9 in the morning I saw Valerie's familiar red Honda driving past the school without stopping. Keeping at a safe distance I followed her. She drove to a shopping mall in another part of the city. There she parked and went inside. I waited in the car for about an hour until she came out. But she didn't come out alone. Next to her walked a man about my age, tall with dark hair. They were holding hands. My heart was beating so hard I was afraid it would stop. Here it was, living proof of my wife's betrayal. But the worst was yet to come. They got into his car, a black Ford pickup, and drove off. I followed them again. They stopped at a small house in the suburbs. The house looked cozy with a small garden and a white fence. Valerie had keys to this house. I sat in the car watching my wife enter the house with another man, and felt my world falling apart. But that's not all. The biggest shock was waiting for me at home. When Valerie returned that evening, she told me she had spent the day with her sick mother at the hospital. Another lie in a long list. I decided I needed to find out more about that man in that house. The next day I went there again and wrote down the address. Then I went to the property registration office. What I learned shocked me more than the betrayal itself. The house was registered in the name of Michael Thompson. But the most interesting thing was in another document. The house was bought 3 months ago, and among the co-owners was listed Valerie Johnson. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She had bought a house with her lover. They were planning a future together. That night I thought long and hard about what to do. I could make a scene, I could go to a lawyer, I could just confront Valerie with the facts. But I decided to act differently. The next morning I went to the bank and found out that Valerie had transferred a significant amount of money from our joint account to her personal one. Money we had been saving for vacation and home renovation. Then I realized that Valerie wasn't just cheating on me emotionally, she was stealing our joint money for a new life with Michael. I started preparing. I transferred my share of the money to a new account, collected all documents about our joint property, made copies of all important papers. And then I waited. A week later, Valerie again said she was going to a conference. This time supposedly to Phoenix for 4 days. Interesting conference, I said. What's the name of the hotel? She gave me a name, but I already knew it would be a lie. On the day of her departure, I waited an hour after she left, and then drove to that house in the suburbs. Valerie's and Michael's cars were in the driveway. Lights were on in the windows and I could see their silhouettes. But I didn't go there to make a scene. I had a different plan. I returned home and started packing Valerie's things. Not everything, just the essentials. Clothes, cosmetics, documents, jewelry. I carefully packed everything into suitcases. Then I drove to that house and placed the suitcases by the front door. Along with the suitcases I left a note. Valerie, I know about Michael and your shared house. I know about the money you took from our account. I know about all your lying conferences and sick relatives. Your things are here. Expect divorce papers tomorrow. Don't come home. Larry. I didn't wait for an answer. I just left. The next few days were very difficult. Valerie called dozens of times but I didn't answer. She sent text messages asking for explanations to talk to give her a chance. But there was nothing more to talk about. 8 years of marriage ended not with screaming and quarrels, but with silence and suitcases by someone else's door. A week later the lawyer filed divorce papers. Valerie didn't resist. Maybe she understood that she had gone too far. We divided the property through lawyers. The house had to be sold. I couldn't live there after everything that happened. Valerie kept her share and her new house with Michael. The divorce was finalized in 6 months. We met for the last time in court, signed papers and went our separate ways. I never found out when exactly her betrayal began. Maybe months before I found out about it. Maybe she had been planning to leave me for a long time but didn't know how. But let me tell you more about those final months before I discovered everything. The signs were there, I just didn't want to see them. There were the late-night phone calls that she would quickly end when I entered the room. Just work stuff, she would say, but her voice had a different tone, softer, more intimate than any work conversation should be. There were the new clothes. Valerie had never been particularly fashion-conscious during our marriage, but suddenly she started buying new outfits, lingerie that I never saw her wear at home, perfumes that smelled different from her usual scent. The gym membership was another red flag. Valerie claimed she wanted to get in shape, which wasn't unusual, but she would come home from these gym sessions glowing in a way that seemed like more than just post-workout endorphins. And then there were the changes in our physical relationship. We had gone from making love regularly to barely touching. When I tried to initiate intimacy, she would claim she was tired, stressed from work, or not in the mood. But I could sense there was someone else occupying her thoughts and desires. The most painful part wasn't just the physical betrayal, it was the emotional distance. Valerie stopped sharing her day with me, stopped asking about mine. We became strangers living under the same roof, going through the motions of marriage while the foundation crumbled beneath us. I remember one particular evening when I tried to talk to her about us, about how distant we'd become. She brushed off my concerns, saying she was just going through a stressful period at work. But her eyes wouldn't meet mine, and I could see the guilt written across her face. The financial betrayal hurt almost as much as the emotional one. When I discovered how much money she had transferred to her personal account, I realized this wasn't a spontaneous affair. This was a calculated plan to build a new life while keeping me in the dark. $3,000 for furniture for their house. $2,000 for a weekend trip they took together while I thought she was visiting her sister. $500 here, $800 there, all adding up to thousands of dollars that should have been ours, not theirs. I found receipts hidden in her purse, romantic dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, hotels in our own city where they would meet during lunch breaks, gifts for him that cost more than she'd ever spent on me for birthdays or anniversaries. The most devastating discovery came when I found a birthday card in her car. It wasn't for me, it was for Michael. The message inside was written in her handwriting: "To my love, thank you for showing me what happiness feels like again. Here's to our future together. Forever yours, V." Reading those words felt like a physical blow. Not only was she cheating, but she was in love. This wasn't just a physical affair. She had emotionally moved on from our marriage completely. I spent hours sitting in my car outside their house, watching them through the windows. They looked happy together. They cooked dinner side by side, watched movies on the couch, shared intimate moments that used to belong to us. It was like watching someone else live the life that should have been mine. Michael was everything I wasn't. Where I was careful and methodical, he seemed spontaneous and adventurous. Where I preferred quiet evenings at home, he took her on weekend trips and surprise dates. Where I had grown comfortable in our routine, he brought excitement and passion back into her life. But what hurt the most was seeing how alive Valerie looked with him. She laughed in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her eyes sparkled when she looked at him. She touched him constantly, his arm, his face, his hand, in ways she had stopped touching me long ago. I realized that somewhere along the way we had stopped being lovers and had become roommates. We shared bills, chores, and a bed, but we had lost the connection that made us choose each other in the first place. Maybe that's what made her betrayal so devastating. It wasn't just that she cheated, it was that she found with someone else what we used to have, what I thought we still had, but what was apparently already dead. The night before I left those suitcases at their door, I walked through our house one last time, remembering all the dreams we had shared there. The kitchen where we used to cook together, the living room where we would curl up watching movies, the bedroom where we once couldn't keep our hands off each other. Every room held memories of who we used to be, of the love we used to share. But those memories felt like they belonged to different people now. The Valerie who had promised to love me forever was not the same woman who had been lying to me for months while building a secret life with another man. I packed her things carefully, not out of love, but out of respect for what we once had. Each item I folded represented another piece of our life together ending. Her favorite dress that I had bought her for our anniversary. The jewelry I had given her over the years. The photos of us that she hadn't thrown away yet. Writing that note was the hardest part. I rewrote it several times, trying to find the right words to end 8 years of marriage. In the end, I kept it simple and factual. There was no point in dramatics or emotional pleas. The facts spoke for themselves. When I drove away from that house for the last time, leaving her belongings on the doorstep, I felt a strange mixture of devastation and relief. Devastation because my marriage was over, but relief because I was finally free from the lies, the suspicion, and the constant feeling that something was wrong. The phone call started immediately. Valerie called frantically, leaving voicemails begging me to talk to her, to let her explain. But what was there to explain? I had seen everything I needed to see. I knew about the house, the money, the lies, the secret life she had built without me. Her text messages became increasingly desperate. She claimed she loved me, that Michael meant nothing to her, that it was all a mistake. But I knew better. You don't buy a house with someone who means nothing to you. You don't transfer thousands of dollars for someone who is just a mistake. The hardest part was telling our friends and family. Some of them had suspected something was wrong. Others were completely shocked. A few tried to convince me to give her another chance, to try counseling, to work things out. But I knew there was no going back. Trust, once broken so completely, can't be repaired. And I deserved better than to spend the rest of my life wondering if she was lying to me, checking up on her, living in constant suspicion and fear. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly smooth. Valerie didn't contest anything, probably out of guilt. We split our assets 50-50, sold the house, and divided the proceeds. She kept her new house with Michael and her new life. I kept my dignity and my freedom. 6 months after I left those suitcases on their doorstep, I was officially divorced. The judge's signature made it final, but emotionally, I had been divorced since the night I discovered her betrayal. Now, 2 years later, I can honestly say that leaving was the best decision I ever made. It was painful, devastating, and lonely at first, but it was also liberating. I no longer had to pretend that everything was okay when it wasn't. I no longer had to live with someone who didn't want to be with me. I built a new life for myself. I have a new apartment, a new job, new hobbies, and new friends. I've even started dating again, though I'm taking it slow. The betrayal made me cautious about trusting someone with my heart again. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had confronted Valerie directly instead of leaving her things at Michael's house. Would she have ended the affair and tried to work on our marriage? Would we have gone to counseling and possibly saved our relationship? But deep down, I know that someone who could lie so extensively, who could steal our joint savings, who could build an entire secret life while living with me, isn't someone I could ever trust again. And a marriage without trust is no marriage at all. I don't hate Valerie. I've moved past the anger and resentment. Now I mostly feel sad for the time we wasted, for the love we lost, for the dreams we shared that will never come true. But I also feel grateful. Grateful that I discovered the truth before wasting more years in a fake marriage. Grateful that I had the strength to leave. Grateful that I've found peace and happiness on my own. The betrayal changed me, but it didn't break me. It taught me to trust my instincts, to value honesty above all else, and to never settle for less than I deserve. It taught me that being alone is better than being with someone who doesn't truly want to be with you. As I finished telling this story, I realized that while the betrayal was one of the most painful experiences of my life, it was also one of the most important. It freed me from a relationship that was already over and gave me the chance to build something better. I don't know what happened to Valerie and Michael after our divorce. I don't want to know. That chapter of my life is closed and I'm focused on writing new ones. To anyone who might be going through something similar, I want you to know that you deserve better. You deserve honesty, loyalty, and genuine love. Don't settle for lies and betrayal just because it's comfortable or familiar. Don't stay with someone who treats you like a backup plan while they pursue their real dreams with someone else. The truth might hurt, but lies hurt more in the long run. And freedom, even if it comes with loneliness, is better than living in a prison of deception. Life is too short to waste it on people who don't value you. Trust yourself, trust your instincts, and have the courage to walk away when someone shows you who they really are. But my story doesn't end with the divorce papers. There were more revelations that came to light months after everything was finalized, revelations that made me realize just how deep Valerie's deception really went. About a year after our divorce, I received an unexpected phone call from Tom, one of our mutual friends from college. Tom had always been closer to Valerie than to me, which is why his call surprised me. "Larry, I need to tell you something," Tom said, his voice heavy with guilt. "Something I should have told you years ago, but Valerie made me promise to keep quiet." My stomach dropped. What else was there to discover? Tom explained that he had known about Michael for over 2 years before I found out. He had accidentally seen them together at a restaurant in another city during one of his business trips. When he confronted Valerie, she begged him not to tell me, claiming she was going to end things with Michael and work on our marriage. "She kept saying she just needed time to figure things out," Tom said. "She made me believe that telling you would only hurt you unnecessarily if she was going to end it anyway." But months kept passing and nothing changed. I felt terrible keeping it from you, but I didn't know what to do. The betrayal felt fresh all over again. Not only had Valerie deceived me for years, but she had also manipulated our friends into keeping her secrets. How many other people knew about her affair while I was living in ignorance? Tom wasn't the only one. Over the following weeks, other friends came forward with their own pieces of the puzzle. Sarah, Valerie's colleague from school, admitted she had covered for Valerie multiple times, providing alibis for her secret meetings with Michael. James, our neighbor, revealed he had seen Michael's truck in our driveway several times when I was at work, but he assumed it was a repair person or delivery. The most shocking revelation came from my own brother, Mark. During a family barbecue, he pulled me aside with tears in his eyes. "I saw them together about 6 months before you found out," he confessed. "They were at the mall holding hands, kissing. I confronted Valerie about it and she broke down crying, begging me not to tell you. She said she was confused, that she still loved you but was going through a midlife crisis. She promised me she would end things with him and get counseling to work on your marriage." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My own brother had kept this from me for over a year and a half. The people I trusted most had all been part of Valerie's web of lies, whether willingly or through manipulation. But the discoveries didn't stop there. While cleaning out some old boxes in my new apartment, I found Valerie's old laptop that she had left behind. Curiosity got the better of me and I decided to look through it. What I found made everything else pale in comparison. Email conversations between Valerie and Michael going back 3 years, almost the entire length of their affair. But these weren't just love letters between two people having an affair. They were detailed plans for their future together, complete with timelines for when she would leave me. One email from Michael, dated 2 years before I discovered the affair, read, "I can't wait much longer, V. When are you going to tell Larry about us? We've been planning our life together for over a year now. I want to wake up next to you every morning, not just when we can sneak away for weekends." Valerie's response was calculated and cold. "I need more time to set everything up financially. Larry handles most of our investments and savings. I need to make sure I get my fair share before I tell him." Just a few more months and then we can be together openly. There were dozens of such exchanges, revealing that their affair wasn't a passionate mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a calculated plan to systematically destroy my life while building theirs. The emails revealed other disturbing details. They had been intimate in our own home, in our bed, multiple times when I was traveling for work. They had laughed about my obliviousness, making jokes about how easy it was to fool me. They had even taken photos together in our house, in our bedroom, as some kind of twisted trophy. One email chain discussed their wedding plans. Yes, they had been planning to get married while Valerie was still married to me. They had already looked at venues, discussed guest lists, and even picked out engagement rings. The email was dated 6 months before I discovered the affair. But perhaps the most devastating discovery was a draft email that Valerie had never sent, dated just 2 weeks before I found out about everything. In it, she detailed her plan to divorce me and frame it as my fault. "I'm going to start complaining to our friends about how distant and cold Larry has become," the draft read. "I'll make it seem like he's the one who checked out of our marriage. That way, when I ask for the divorce, everyone will be on my side. I've already started dropping hints to Sarah and my mom about how unhappy I am. By the time I leave him, everyone will think I'm the victim of a loveless marriage." Reading that draft felt like discovering that someone had been planning to murder you. The level of premeditation, the careful manipulation, the complete lack of regard for my feelings or our shared history, it was sociopathic. I printed out the most damning emails and put them in a folder. I didn't know what I would do with them, but I felt like I needed evidence of just how deep her deception had gone. The financial betrayal was even worse than I had initially thought. Going through bank statements and credit card records more thoroughly, I discovered that Valerie had been systematically moving money out of our accounts for over 18 months. It wasn't just the large transfers I had noticed, it was hundreds of smaller amounts that I had missed. She had opened credit cards in my name without my knowledge, maxing them out to fund her new life with Michael. She had taken cash advances, claiming they were for home improvements that never happened. She had even borrowed money from my retirement account, forging my signature on the paperwork. When I added it all up, Valerie had stolen nearly $40,000 from me over the course of her affair. Money that we had saved together for our future, money that I had worked overtime to earn, money that was meant to secure our retirement. All of it had gone to fund her affair and her new house with Michael. I took all this evidence to my lawyer, but he told me that because our divorce was already finalized and I had agreed to the settlement, there wasn't much I could do legally. The statute of limitations had passed on some of the financial fraud, and proving the rest would cost more in legal fees than I could possibly recover. But there was one thing I could do. I could make sure that the people in her life knew who she really was. I made copies of the most damning emails and evidence of the financial theft. Then I sent them to Valerie's parents, her siblings, her colleagues at school, and our mutual friends, the same friends who had kept her secrets from me. I didn't send them out of revenge or spite. I sent them because I realized that Valerie was still telling people that our marriage had simply grown apart, that we had divorced amicably due to irreconcilable differences. She was painting herself as the victim of a failed marriage rather than the architect of its destruction. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Valerie's own mother called me, crying and apologizing. She had no idea about the extent of the affair or the financial theft. Several of our friends called to apologize for keeping secrets from me and to express their horror at what they had learned. But the most satisfying response came from Valerie's school district. Apparently, having an affair with someone while using school resources to cover it up, she had used her school phone and email for many of her communications with Michael, was grounds for disciplinary action. She was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. I heard through mutual friends that Michael's construction company, where he worked as a project manager, also took a dim view of his role in the affair, especially after they learned about the financial fraud. He was passed over for a promotion he had been expecting and eventually left the company. Their perfect little world, built on lies and stolen money, was finally crumbling. But even then, I wasn't done discovering the full extent of Valerie's deception. A few months later, I received a call from a woman named Jennifer who introduced herself as Michael's ex-wife. "I know this might be strange," Jennifer said, "but I wanted to talk to you. I think we have more in common than you might realize." It turned out that Michael had cheated on Jennifer with Valerie, but their affair had started even earlier than I had thought. Michael was still married when he and Valerie began their relationship. Jennifer had discovered the affair around the same time I did, and like me, she had been devastated by the betrayal. "The worst part," Jennifer told me, "is that Valerie knew Michael was married. She actively pursued a married man, helping him cheat on his wife. When I confronted her about it, she had the audacity to tell me that if Michael was happy in his marriage, he wouldn't have been interested in her. Jennifer and I met for coffee a few times, sharing our experiences and supporting each other through the aftermath of our respective betrayals. It was oddly comforting to talk to someone who truly understood what I had been through. Through Jennifer, I learned that Michael and Valerie's relationship wasn't the fairy tale they had pretended it was. They fought constantly about money, especially after they both lost their jobs due to the scandal. The house they had bought together was in foreclosure because neither of them could afford the mortgage payments after their financial situations changed. Jennifer also told me that several of Michael's friends had told her that he had been cheating on Valerie too, having brief affairs with women he met at bars or through dating apps. The man who had destroyed 2 marriages was apparently incapable of being faithful to anyone. I almost feel sorry for her, Jennifer said. She destroyed her marriage and yours for a man who was never going to be faithful to her either. She gave up everything for someone who was already looking for her replacement. Hearing this should have made me feel vindicated or satisfied, but instead I just felt sad. Sad for all the wasted time, all the destroyed relationships, all the pain that could have been avoided if people had just been honest from the beginning. The final chapter in this saga came 2 years after our divorce was finalized. I was grocery shopping when I ran into Valerie in the produce section. It was the first time I had seen her since our court date. She looked different, older, worn down, tired. Her hair was shorter and had gray streaks that she hadn't bothered to color. She was wearing clothes that looked like they came from a thrift store rather than the boutique shops she used to frequent. "Larry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been hoping to run into you. I wanted to apologize. I could have walked away. Part of me wanted to. But curiosity got the better of me." "For what exactly?" I asked. "For everything," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "For the lying, for the cheating, for stealing from you. For destroying our marriage and our life together. For making our friends keep secrets. For everything." She looked genuinely remorseful, but I had learned not to trust Valerie's emotions. She had been an expert at manipulation throughout our marriage. "I know you probably don't believe me," she continued, "but I really did love you once. I got lost somewhere along the way. I made terrible choices and I hurt the one person who loved me most." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do all of it? Why didn't you just ask for a divorce if you were unhappy?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the floor. "Because I was a coward," she finally said. "I was afraid of being alone, afraid of starting over, afraid of admitting that I had made a mistake. It was easier to live a double life than to face the truth about what I had become." She told me that Michael had left her 6 months after our divorce was finalized. He had found someone else, a younger woman he met at a bar, and had simply moved out one day while Valerie was at work. "He took half the furniture and emptied our joint checking account," she said with bitter irony. "I guess what goes around comes around." She was now living in a small apartment and working 2 part-time jobs to make ends meet. The teaching position was gone forever. The school district had ultimately fired her after their investigation concluded. The house they had bought together was lost to foreclosure, taking her credit rating with it. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said. "I know I hurt you in ways that can never be undone. But I wanted you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret what I did. I threw away the best thing in my life for a fantasy that was never real." Looking at her standing there in the grocery store, broken and alone, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel: pity. Not the kind of pity that makes you want to help someone, but the kind that makes you grateful for the choices you've made. "I hope you find some peace, Valerie," I said. "I really do. But I can't give you the forgiveness you're looking for. That's something you'll have to work out for yourself." She nodded, wiping away tears. "I know. I wanted you to know that you deserved better. You always deserved better." As I walked away from her that day, I realized that I had finally found the closure I didn't even know I was looking for. Seeing what Valerie's choices had cost her, understanding the full scope of the damage she had inflicted on everyone around her, knowing that the life she had destroyed our marriage for had ultimately destroyed her too, it all helped me understand that leaving had been the right choice. I'm happy now in ways that I never was during the last years of our marriage. I've learned to trust again, to love again, to build something real with someone who values honesty and commitment. The woman I'm with now knows my whole story, and she understands why trust is so important to me. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had never discovered Valerie's affair. Would we still be married, living the lie she had so carefully constructed? Would I still be the fool, working overtime to pay for a house that belonged to another man, saving money that she was stealing for her secret life? I'm grateful I'll never have to find out. The pain of discovery was awful, but it was also liberation. It freed me from a relationship that was built on lies and gave me the chance to build something real. Life is too short to waste it on people who don't value you. Trust yourself, trust your instincts, and have the courage to walk away when someone shows you who they really are. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.